what's going on? Welcome into another edition of the Boston Sports Summit. I'm here with a very special guest. We have Chris Cotillo. I always have to go the opposite way, like I see you this way, but it's actually this way. Reporter for MassLive, Red Sox beat writer. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Busy day yesterday, and we're going to get right into that busy time of the year for the offseason. What are your kind of thoughts, expectations right now?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of yesterday, I think it was, kind of just, roster cleanup, but I think some more significant moves than, I would have imagined. Obviously, Bernardino's a guy that has been really good for this team for a few years. So to see him get traded was a little bit of a surprise. To see, Murphy, who had a pretty good year, get moved, also a little surprising. I think it just speaks to the fact that they feel really comfortable about the pitching depth, and they're not really at a point now where they want to raise the floor of the pitching staff, because I think you've seen that, raised in the last couple of years. Believe it or not, they had, I think, the best bullpen ERA in baseball last year. Obviously, Chapman and Whitlock helped a lot there, and a lot of young guys came up and contributed from early and totally to some other guys. So, that means tough decisions are going to come. So I think organizationally, that's a good sign. Obviously, I think big picture, the Brennan Bernardino trade to the Rockies on a Tuesday hopefully won't be the biggest Red Sox move of the year. I think if they did that, fans would storm Fenway in April. But you got to get some of that movement out of the way early to kind of follow MLB's deadlines and get your roster in a place where you can make those bigger strikes. And I think Breslow set a high bar for himself. They want a really good starter and a power bat. Anything short of that's going to be a failure.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something that I've been clamoring for a long time, and it's ironic too that they're talking about wanting a power bat, and they kind of had it, but they traded away their power guy. Which, again, say what you want about the diva personality, him not wanting to be a leader for that type of money. It is what it is, but you didn't even get back an asset, really. I mean, I've been here saying Jordan Hicks sucks. You traded away Kyle Tibbs to get Dustin May, who Dustin May's one good outing was against Houston, and then the rest was just, trash. Yep. I mean, it's, I'm excited for this offseason, but again, I have been built on this team spending money to go out and win championships. And within the last decade, that's the last thing they do. What is going to be different? Is this year going to be different? Is Fenway Sports Group finally going to actually pony up the money to go after the types of guys that we need to solidify this roster?
They did last year. They gave Alex Bregman a 1-year, $40 million deal. That's all aimed at competing in 2025, which they did. They gave up a huge amount of prospects for Crochet, and then signed him for $170 million. And they extended Anthony, and they spent to a lesser extent, by securing Rafaela, Bayo, Campbell, Walker Buehler. That move is a big market move. It didn't work, obviously, but 1 year for $21 million. That's all aimed at 2025 and, paying up to try to compete. So I think those types of arguments about them not spending and stuff like that are totally relevant to 2 years ago when they really didn't do much other than, Giolito and some things around the edges, the sale for Grissom trade that backfired, things like that. And I think they obviously, the end of the Heim era, there were a lot of times that, they did not spend and were not aggressive in the off seasons, were not aggressive at trade deadlines, stuff like that. But I do think last year, something changed, and I think they wanted to align it with when Anthony and Meyer and Campbell and Early and Tolle and some of these guys would be ready, which we saw them all, in the big leagues to varying levels of success last year. So, the Devers trade, to me, I agree with the point about not getting much back. To me, it's all about how you spend that money. Giving Anthony some of it is not enough. I think they need to go out and, get a Schwarber or an Alonso and get a top-line pitcher. And the roster is really not that far off. You don't need 15 different pieces. You don't need 10 different pieces. You probably don't need 5. You need like 2 or 3 upgrades at real spots, obviously filling the Bregman hole, and then, going and getting one other lineup upgrade and a starting pitcher and maybe some lefty relievers after they traded all of them yesterday. So, again, I think when always look back at that Red Sox Devers trade, I've thought about it this way. Part one, the main reason they did it was to rid themselves of Devers because the situation had become untenable, and being there every day, I can tell you that it was horrible. Like they were not going to be able to go on, like that together. Part two was about the financial room, which now is the time to actually show that. And part three was about the 4 guys they get back. And so when you think about that in that lens, maybe Kyle Harrison turns into something. Maybe Jordan Hicks can turn it around next year. But it was really about addition by subtraction, and then the after effect of that being, clearing that salary, and it's on them now to spend that money.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because the amount, and again, I understand. Say like Jordan Hicks had a tough year, not only out in San Francisco, but especially here in Boston. And as you mentioned, again, could they have gone on the winning that they did, the second half of the year without Devers? I like you were saying that it's that they couldn't because the situation was tough, and I don't disagree with that. And it's interesting because the amount of games that Jordan Hicks blew, and the amount of close games that we're in, how much would it have been different if Devers was in the lineup? I mean, at the end of the season, going into that Yankee series, I think in game 1 when they showed the lineup, I'm looking at that card going, uh-oh.
Right.
Nate Soga, Nick Eaton, Romy Gonzalez is, at least 3 of our guys in the starting lineup. I'm like, if I had any hopes of us competing, it was a freaking miracle that we would make a deep playoff run with that lineup. So I don't know, just the addition with the subtraction of Devers obviously cost us. Now, yes, we discussed that, we didn't get much in return, but the thing that concerns me is, yes, they did actually go out and spend. They, like you said, signed Bregman to a 1-year, $40 million deal. They did get Garrett Crochet, which is great. They did the right things. But you said on your show, the Fenway Rundown, which, by the way, just quick side note, give us a little background with the Fenway Rundown. Tell us, about it, and if you could.
Yeah, well, we just recorded one 10 minutes ago on the trades from yesterday. So me and Sean McAdam grinding it out twice a week as a compliment to all our writing coverage on MassLive. So it's fun. We had Ortiz on last week, and I don't think Sean and I are both writers first, but fun to do it in that platform too.
Yeah, no, it's always a blast, and I watched your interview with David Ortiz, and it was fun. It's always good, listening to David talk about the Red Sox, because he still loves.
Yeah,
ball.
he's involved.
Oh yeah. But you made the point a couple months ago, I think right around the trade deadline, it was, when you were saying how the Red Sox, John Henry will only invest if the Red Sox actually have a good Fangraphs percentage of winning the World Series. And they didn't. They haven't had that for a while. Yes, they signed Bregman, but it still moved the ticker up just a barely an inch. Is that going to be the same mentality they use going into this offseason, whether it is signing big free agents, making trades? What do you expect out of the Fangraphs model and John Henry spending, the correlation?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, and I don't know if it's Fangraphs he looks at. He looks at, betting models and things like that to see where their World Series odds are, which I always found funny, because it's like, you can change those, John, that's kind of, you are the one that it's a chicken or the egg thing. And I think it's pretty clear which side of that it's on. So, it's not a coincidence that your World Series odds improve when you sign Bregman, or if you go out and sign Schwarber and Dylan Cease this offseason, or whatever it is. I think, to play devil's advocate on what he was thinking there, I'm sure that, the gap between being a middling team to being a real World Series contender 2 years ago, 3 years ago was vast. That's pretty obvious. they had a lot of, hopes and wishes and things like that, where they were kind of just hoping that, some of these guys would, come up and be good. Now you don't really have to dream on it as much. It's more about, Roman Anthony, is going to be a real part of it moving forward. Obviously, you can expect that, like Campbell and Meyer and Tolley and Early and Narvaez and some of these other young players are going to contribute in whatever form they do. Some guys are going to take steps forward. Some are going to take steps back. To me, it's, the core is there, and you don't have to dream on what a playoff run looks like. They celebrated with champagne in late September for the first time in a while. And that's something, 89 wins. It was a step in the right direction. Now it's about ratcheting that up and getting deep into the playoffs. And so, I don't think the roster was at a point where you could get it to, be a World Series contender with, move A, move B, and move C 2 or 3 years ago. Now it is. It's closer, and the core is there. And so I think now, now's definitely the time. It's not about bridging the gap anymore. It's finishing the job to me. And when you look at it, if you do look at it, and I can pull up, I don't know if you have any sponsors here for betting sites that I would be violating by talking about whichever. So I'll look at the first app on my phone on DraftKings. The Red Sox, let's see, they're probably like 6 to 8 on the list. They're 8th. They are 17 to 1 behind the Dodgers, Yankees, Phillies, Astros, Mariners, Mets, and Braves. They have better odds than the Blue Jays, who just got to the World Series, and the Brewers, who obviously have the best record in baseball of winning the whole thing. Next year, when you get to the American League, they have the 4th best odds behind the Yankees, Mariners, and Astros. So it's like they're not 75 to 1 or 50 to 1 to win the whole thing. They are in that upper third. And so does that push him to spend? I'm going to guess yes, but the proof's always in the pudding, right? I mean, we've seen him do unpredictable things before, and we also, and this is continuing to be a criticism, and I'm like a broken record mentioning it every 2 minutes, but we don't know what he's thinking because he won't talk to us, which continues to be absurd, ridiculous, but it's not going to change. Exactly. And by us, I mean the media, but I really mean the fan base, which everybody, you included, deserve better.
And that's what we've been clamoring on. And I grew up. I mean, I will never forget watching the 99 All-Star game. I'll never forget watching Aaron Boone hit that and breaking all our hearts. But then us going on to win in 04, spending the money, going out, getting Beckett, Lowell, I mean, even these guys didn't work, but Carl Crawford, Pablo Sandoval, and at least in the Crawford thing, I was always of the notion, hey, you let go of him too early. He was always a great player in Tampa, granted.
Right.
He did suck when he was in Boston. But one of the things that, and yes, with him not speaking, which I think the fans not only cornered him to sign Rafael Devers during that Winter Classic when the Sox or the Bruins were playing Bruins were playing the Penguins at Fenway Park.
Mm-hmm. I was there, and I've never believed that. So, but go ahead.
So you didn't see? You never saw the video of the kids outside?
The deal was agreed upon 3 days before that, but
was it?
Yes.
Oh, damn. Well, I got my screwed up. Regardless, all right. So there goes that notion.
Yeah, and he's not the type to look at booze and be like, "Oh shit, let's spend $300 million." He doesn't really care. That's the thing. I mean, he cares about the team. He just doesn't really care about what fans think. So that's been a long time 98.5 thing. Love those guys, mean it, but I mean that's just not what happened. So I get it.
Okay. Well, I'll never forget that video on Twitter of the kids screaming, sign Devers, pay Devers, as if it hasn't happened yet. And so
yeah. It wasn't announced yet, so
that's why. All right, so okay, both sides. So when looking at this roster, again, you're right. I don't think we need to overhaul this roster. I think we got plenty of utility guys, especially with the trades that just happened yesterday. But one of the issues that Breslow has mentioned is the fact that we're not great on defense. We led the league in errors last year. And even when looking at the infield, without Alex Bregman, it's a big question mark. And even with Tristan Casas possibly coming back, who is Tristan Casas even going to be the same guy? Which he's always been injured. So which Tristan Casas are we going to get anyway?
Right.
We don't even know that for a fact. So my thing is, when looking at this, I think we need to bring Bregman back, just to shore up third base, and then have Meyer move him to second because he's a middle infielder. Mm-hmm. Now you can have had Story or Meyer, I don't care. It's just that's part of it. Not to mention, we should be able to sign a Pete Alonso, a Kyle Schwarber, which, of course, I'm advocating for Pete Alonso not only because he's a Florida Gator, but he also led the league, in errors at first base last year. So it's kind of a double-edged sword with what you get there.
Yeah.
Are we capable of signing multiple big-name players and capable in a perfect world? John Henry is willing to spend. Let's just throw that out there. In a perfect world, are we capable to bring back Bregman, also sign another big-time first baseman like a Pete Alonso, and make a trade for a starting pitcher or sign a starting pitcher? What are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you look at kind of how much money they have to spend, while the Devers thing, that money is going to be, obviously available down the line. I think that the gap has kind of closed, a little bit between what people think they have to spend and what they've kind of already spent quicker than, people anticipate. I also think quicker than I anticipated when I was looking at it a couple weeks ago, because like in my mind's eye, Bregman coming off the books, as well as Giolito's, $20 million. Some of these other guys, Matz was making significant money. He's a free agent, obviously. They DFA'd Nate Lowe yesterday. So there's some guys that you could have seen were like, oh, well, they're making good money, so there's a lot of money coming off the books. But when you look at it, and I always look at Red Sox payroll on Twitter, which is a great account. Does a great job with all their spreadsheets and stuff that I'm not smart enough to possibly keep up. You look at kind of the jumps year over year, and you look at what these guys made. I mean, in terms of the CBT, which is the only thing that matters really in the eyes of these guys, Garrett Crochet was a guy who came with a 4 point. I don't know. I lost him on here. It's because it wasn't on the team. Crochet came with a 3.8 hit last year. So he was 3.8 against their budget. Next year, this extension kicks in and he goes to 28. So that's $25 million in CBT room that's already spoken for. Then you look at Anthony. Anthony was a guy who on the CBT this year was going to cost you probably, 800,000, 700,000. They haven't, he wasn't even there half the year. So less than 500,000. He is going to make 16 and a quarter in terms of the CBT next year. So to me, that's 50 million or 40 million. That jump covers what Bregman savings is, and plus, another player, because Bregman CBT hit was like 31 or 32. So to me, that is kind of a hidden piece of this, where those guys aren't coming off the books and you have all that CBT room. Red Sox payroll, I'll plug them again, or we don't know. They have their projection at 204 right now, and what they've already committed. Last year they were at 248. So that's, 40 plus million to spend if you're giving Bregman that for 40, like, what I'm talking about? It's not like they have 120 million to spend before the CBT. It comes down to
that's just the base threshold, right?
Yeah, and I think the wild card in all this is teams are afraid to be part of that or go over that CBT threshold. The more you do it and the more years in a row you do it, you get penalized more. The wild card to me is those rules might not exist in a year when the CBA is up, right? So when the collective bargaining agreement could be ripped up and thrown out, then the system could completely reset. So maybe they say, well, if we blow past and have all these penalties and we have a $280 million payroll, totally guessing, not saying anything because I don't know, then we're not going to have to pay.
You should know.
Yeah. That's like a quick sidebar yesterday, tweeting about, I can confirm the Red Sox traded Bernardino. Okay, we'll tweet that or confirm that they have made a trade with Seattle, and I have 10 texts out like, who did you get back for Bernardino? Or to Rockies people, who did you trade for Bernardino? Like 10, 15 texts. Sean McAdam and Chris Smith, who I work with, also have that. We're waiting on one. We just need one person to respond to our 30 combined texts, and people are responding. Why aren't you telling us the return? You think I know that and I'm just hiding it from you? Obviously, we are trying. Anyway, they don't have, they don't have a ton of room under that first CBT. To me, it's like, does that CBT matter? Where, are they going to be worried about that? Or are they okay exceeding it because the thresholds and the penalties might not exist in a year when the collective bargaining agreement's thrown out? That stuff's really interesting. I do think, the interesting thing to me is they already do have 204 CBT dollars committed to the people that they have, because Crochet gets that huge bump, because Anthony gets that huge bump, because you have, some other high dollar guys. Obviously, Chapman's worth it, but he's making 13. Your friend Jordan Hicks is at a $12 million hit. They can't get out of that at this point. Story opted in. Bayo and Sandoval and those guys are making significant money now. So it's not like they have no payroll on the books. They actually do. I don't think anybody would argue against the deals they gave Crochet and Anthony. They're probably going to be bargains. The reality of it is, Anthony's going to be making $1 million in real money next year, but his CBT is spread over those 8 years, so it'll be 16 for accounting purposes. All that stuff is interesting. It kind of comes down to, where do they view the budget? Is it cash? Is it CBT? Is it, accounting versus expenses? Like, it's been different ways in different years in the past. Obviously, those are questions for John Henry and Sam Kennedy, not me. I wish I could answer them, but I'm incapable at this time.
No worries. Oh, we're here talking with Chris Cotillo of MassLive. So what are your expectations? So starting in February, we're here, spring training, the roster that we have. What are you thinking in terms of the Red Sox are going to do, and maybe some of the players that they're going to go after? I just read that the Red Sox are interested in Bo Bichette. Of course, the first thing I did was laugh my ass off when I read that, because I just don't see it happening, though it would be nice, because not only are you hurting the Blue Jays, but you're also bettering yourself. What are your thoughts come spring training that the Red Sox, in terms of free agency, they're going to go after? Or who they
I think, it's very clear that a number 2 starter in some form, or a 1B, and a power hitter. I don't like Alonso as much as I think 95% of people out there, just because I think if you really want to commit to improving your infield defense, there's not that many ways to get there. You have Story coming back and playing short, which they've committed to. Is it going to be kind of hard to find somebody who's a lot better than Bregman at third, right? And then second base is always that question mark. Meyer would be an upgrade, sure, but that's uncertain. And then first base, you'd have the worst defender there in the league if you put Alonso over there. It'd be a way significant downgrade from Casas defensively, honestly. Mm-hmm. And probably a downgrade from like Romy Gonzalez and Nate Lowe and those guys. That's just the way it is. If you can have Alonso DH 75% of the games and have him sprinkle in at first for certain matchups and hope he doesn't screw up in those games, then that makes a lot of sense to me. To me, I would like to sign him as a full-time DH. That's kind of why I think I like Schwarber better. Because, people looked at the left-right thing. That doesn't really matter with Schwarber. Schwarber crushed lefties last year at the same rate he did righties. I'm biased because I covered him, I think, for 2 months and loved it. He was a great, great guy, and he's from Waltham, of course. So, people love that, but not really. But if I would go Schwarber over Alonso, I don't know where else you're going to get that bat. Bichette is an interesting one, because if he can play second and be good defensively there, I think that solves the middle infield for a long time. And we have Meyer mixing in, and I think that's actually a better fit than people think. Obviously, he's not a perfect player either. Who is? And then, the rotation, I think that's where you have a ton of options from the trade market. Joe Ryan, everybody loves, and Freddie Peralta, Hunter Green, Gore, all these types of guys. The free agent market, Valdez, Cease, Michael King, Imai from Japan, even guys like Zach Gallen, who had a down year. There's some people that could slot in. So I think it's very, very simple in terms of the top two needs: a masher in the middle of the lineup, and then a starter who's better than Bayo. And I think that Bayo's a guy that can get you through a regular season and have high highs and sometimes low lows. He had a lot of high highs last year. To me, behind Crochet in the playoffs, you had a number two starter you weren't willing to trust with more than 30 pitches in a game that could send you to the next round. That speaks volumes to me. I think they need a guy they can trust there.
Absolutely. The one thing that you just said, it was there and now it's gone. I agree with you on the whole, like, Schwarber, Alonso. Oh, this is what I want to say. Everyone, and I don't know how strong the Red Sox are in pursuing Framber Valdez, but after that stunt he pulled last year,
yeah,
I want absolutely no part of him.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it was telling that he was, the biggest name free agent that was in person at the GM meetings in Vegas last year. I think it was clear that he, needed to go and talk to teams in person and be like, all right, hey, I'm here to answer your questions. At the end of the day, I agree with you. That's not great. That's one horrible incident. Not like it was illegal or anything, but you know what I mean? Like one on actually. There's probably some law somewhere, but intentional injury or something. But
the problem.
And he also he's also been one of the best starters in baseball for like 5 years. So I mean, if that irritation of that moment is going to make up for a 3.36 ERA and 1,000 innings over 8 seasons, that's the thing. Like at the end of the day, I don't think that's going to hurt his value because teams need aces, and he's a guy who's been one. I don't know if he's a perfect fit here. I don't know if they'd spend that much on that guy, but I get the point. I just don't think I think teams are going to be like, all right, yeah, that sucked. It's not going to happen again. But at the end of the day, he's going to pitch for you,
Exactly. And then I agree. Like there's probably going to be some team out there that's going to willing to spend top dollar to go get him. One, I obviously hope that's just not us. But two, you have a third string catcher telling you, get off the mound. You didn't like the call that I made, so get off the mound so we can talk about this. Yep. And all of a sudden, he still goes with the pitch. The guy hits a bomb that goes over the train tracks in Houston. And then the very next pitch doesn't even let the catcher settle and drills him straight in the chest. I'm sorry. That's unforgivable at any level, because then again, you have the team going to the backup third string catcher saying, keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut. Because after the game, he's like, oh, well, you just, it's like, no. Tell the truth. Please tell the truth. Tell us how much of a a-hole this guy, was for that move. So, yeah. And let me ask you, too. If the Red Sox do bring back Bregman, let's say, right around the $35 million range, because is that what he's looking for? Right around
so, yeah. I think the years matter a lot to him.
Exactly. Yeah, he cares more about the years. But if they bring him back, are they going to sit there and say, hey, we've signed our power hitter? Or are they still going to try to go after somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I think they need more than that. We saw that even with Bregman in the lineup last year, they still were didn't have enough pop. And, you could argue that with even Devers on the team. Abreu can get hot and hit some home runs. Bregman's not that guy at this point. It wasn't last year. Story, obviously, streaky, but is what it is. I think, you need even like a guy like Suarez would make some sense, just as a guy who can absolutely mash homers. It changes the game, especially in the playoffs. And some of those boomer bust guys, they do change games. They're not perfect. No player is, but, they help.
Just as long as we don't get a Willie Mo Pena, then I'm okay with that.
He's the ultimate boomer bust guy, right?
My gosh, I'll never forget Willie Mo. That was, home run or strikeout. And it was a hell of a lot more strikeouts than home runs.
That's true.
All right. So just, It's November 19th, 2025. We haven't made any deals outside of obviously, Rule 5 stuff yesterday. What are your expectations for next season for the Red Sox? What are we going to be sitting here November 19th, 2026 saying about this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be legitimate contenders if they make the moves that they kind of owe the fans to make. I think they are, they obviously were a win away from moving on to the ALDS this year. And that's, like it's the line is so fine, once you get into October, right? Like they basically, had two bad innings in games 2 or 3. And they did not advance. But that doesn't mean that if they got to the ALDS and played Toronto, they wouldn't have been able to put up a fight. I do think the longer it went, the more the pitching would be depleted. Connolly early might be really good, but to have him make his 5th major league start and a do or die playoff game is not how they would have drawn it up. Losing Giolito was, obviously a big thing. But, the point is, like, they were right there in terms of, like, competing with, the Blue Jays made the World Series, and you saw in the last couple of weeks of the season, the Red Sox, won a series at Rogers Center. I know it's a regular season. It's different. Can't line up the pitching, but, were the Red Sox that far behind the Blue Jays team that went to the World Series? Are they that far behind a Mariners team when they were both at the trade deadline around the same area? And Seattle went out and got, Naylor and Suarez, who worked out. I think you can look at, they're right there with the Yankees as of this moment. And they're right there with the Blue Jays, and they're right there with the Houstons and the Seattles of the world. I don't think it's that gap in the American League. I do think, you look at a Dodgers team and there's a gap with them and everybody, but things happen. There's a long way between now and the end of October when you'd have to face them in the World Series. So I think that the window is open. The division's going to be really good as always. I could see Baltimore. They made an aggressive move last night. Kind of looked like an awful trade for Grayson Rodriguez for Taylor Ward, but that's all aimed at competing next year and getting a player who's a rental. That signifies to me that they're going to be all in on trying to get some of these players. Seattle, an aggressive start to their offseason, getting Naylor. Some of these American League teams are already starting to make moves, and I think, it's on the Red Sox to do that. Fans get a taste of the electricity, a quick one, no playoff games at Fenway and stuff like that last year. But, when you have kind of the anchors of, Anthony's going to be there, and Crochet is going to be there, and there's really good talent across the team, younger guys and older guys, Story as an anchor now, who's going to be there for 2 more years after a pretty good year. Again, it's not that the fans are dreaming on this stuff anymore. They're really looking at it like, hey, we're right there, and it's time to kind of push forward and get over the edge. Some of that's going to come internally, but as Breslow said, they can't just run it back and bank on that. They have to, go and make moves, not just to replace the guys who might leave from Bregman to Giolito to, all the other guys we talked about, but improve the roster. And that'll be the story of the next 4 months or so.
Exactly. It's going to be a fun one. Chris, I know you're a North Carolina guy. You want to give us a quick little thought on our former head coach, Bill Belichick, and his time in Chapel?
Yeah, I mean, he's not getting fired after the year, I don't think. So, kind of in classic form, he kind of treated September as kind of the preseason, which in the NFL, you're judged on your record at the end of the year. It's how you make the playoffs. In college football, if you lose 2 games in September, your season's over. That's kind of how it works, which I don't know if you knew. They got blown out, 3 times basically, including one in front of my very eyes in the TCU game. But they started looking better, and the defense is playing better, and they seem to have some pieces. They need to go get a really good quarterback in the portal. Teams can do that. You've seen guys, like Mendoza go to Indiana and turn it around immediately. And, Will Howard was a guy that Carolina was in on a couple of years ago. And this Chandler Morris kid at Virginia, like there's always really talented guys in the portal. Everybody's in the portal all the time. So they got to pay up for that, move on for the kid they have now, and continue to coach up the defense to be pretty good. And I think they'll be okay next year. But they're going to give him a leash to run his process and run his the way he does things. I think Lombardi too, unfortunately. So it's basketball season here. They're 5-0, and big games against Michigan State and St. Bonaventure next week.
That's all that matters. Yeah, basketball.
That's true. Yeah.
Isn't
I
it?
shifted gears quickly.
Yeah. Come September 30th, you're like, all right, when's basketball starting up?
Seriously, no, it's September 2nd, the TCU game.
Was it Chandler Morris, the guy that Lombardi said will never play in the NFL? That's why they didn't go after him.
There were some reports like that, but then Morris said that he never heard from them. So who knows? There's a lot of different stuff. Obviously a lot related to Jordan Hudson, but a lot of different reports and a lot of stuff floating. And so Pablo Torre is UNC's best beat writer right now. So that continues. There's more today, but it is what it is. It's not like we had a very high bar to clear football wise. Anyway, it's not a powerhouse, but they could be good if they just can figure it out. And they never have been.
Yeah, you don't think Belichick's going to go for the Giants job?
No, and I also don't think the Giants want him. So that kind of makes that one easy.
Yeah, well, Chris, I really appreciate you sitting down, taking the time. You got Chris Cotillo of MassLive. Tell us where people can find you and read your articles and everything.
Yep, MassLive.com, Fenway Rundown podcast, as I said. And, once the workshop gets rolling in January, spots will remain.
Awesome. Well, Chris, once again, I really appreciate it. It's been a blast. And, hey, for the Boston Sports Summit, I'm your host, Tim Barnard, presented by the Grid Network. Chris Cotillo, MassLive, thank you once again. And, all right, we'll be talking soon. Hopefully the Red Sox got some big moves up their sleeve.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.